Hello and welcome to time series forecasting. In this video, I'm going to talk about how to use regression models to forecast a variable. Okay, so far we know that we can forecast a variable yt based on a bunch of x variables. For example, x1t, x2t, and xkt. So after we estimate a model, we'll have values for these beta parameters. And what we can do is we can plug in the values of these x variables in the equation to get the fitted values of this yt variable. We were looking at consumption as a dependent variable, and we regressed consumption on income, savings, and unemployment. So we are interested in predicting this variable consumption based on these three variables. After we estimate this model, we'll have predicted values of these beta coefficients. All we have to do is plug in values of these three variables to get predicted value of consumption. For example, we may be interested in predicting the value of consumption in 2010. All we have to do is use this estimated equation and plug in the values of income, saving, and unemployment in 2010 in the equation, and we'll get predicted value of consumption in 2010. Now this type of forecasting is called ex post forecasting. That is, we are predicting the future that we already know. Now this is not a genuine forecast because we already have the value of consumption in 2010. We didn't need to predict this value. So this is not a genuine forecast, and we already know the values of these x variables, and hence we can use the values of these predictors to forecast consumption. Say this is current time period, and we are interested in forecasting the value of consumption in 2022. Now this will be a genuine forecast. So we again have to use our estimated values of these beta coefficients, but we also need the values of these predictors for 2022 so that we can plug in these values in the equation and get consumption for 2022. We need to know the values of these predictors for 2022 in order to forecast consumption for 2022. But the problem here is we do not know values of these predictors for 2022. What we can use is we can use simple forecasting methods that we discussed earlier to predict the values of these predictors and use these as predictors. Or we can use more sophisticated methods that I will talk about later on to forecast these predictors, and then use those predicted values as predictors. So this is the way of forecasting a particular value of any variable of interest using regression model. So essentially there are two types of forecasts. One is called ex post forecast, in which we use the actual or observed value of x variables to forecast any y variable. And then we have ex ante forecast, and this will be the genuine forecast, and in this case we have no knowledge about the future values of our predictors. Hence we either use simple forecasting methods or some of the more sophisticated methods to first forecast these predictors and then use those values in the regression model to predict our variable of interest. Also, in some cases, the value of some predictors may be known in advance. This could be a case when we will be using seasonal dummy variables, public holidays, trend in a series. So we already know these predictors in advance, and we can use those in our regression model. But in most of the cases, our predictors may not be known in advance, and we have to use some special methods to forecast these values first and then use these values in a regression model. Alright, I'll see you in the next video to talk about scenario-based regression forecasting.